We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners at Burke Financial Partners. This is the Finances Podcast. I'm Jay Burke. My co-host is back after a long absence, Ben Kemp. And today's guest is Jake Pitman, Managing Director and Building Consultant at Manse Group. Jake, thanks for jumping on the podcast with us today.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, guys.
No worries. Now, I've got a question before we actually get into anything. I'm going to ask you this, Jake. The name of our podcast, Fine Answers. Do you understand the play on words there?
I do, yeah. Okay. Yep.
So
correct. Yeah.
So
I'm guessing someone didn't.
Most people that I've asked said, "Oh, I didn't know finances was finances."
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
So maybe we're trying to be a little bit too clever with that.
Took us months to come up with that. Outsmarted ourselves.
There were some horrible names, but at the end of the day, I don't know whether the name matters much. It's like getting your business cards for your business. If you're no good at business, it doesn't really matter what's on your business card.
Yeah, correct. I do know the feeling with the word Manse Group.
I was going to say, where does that come from?
People sometimes go, the Manse Group or, Manse Group, and it's like, oh, okay. So you introduced it very, very well there, Jay.
Great. Oh, thank you. I didn't practice it, and you didn't actually give me the phonetic spelling or pronunciation of it.
Test.
We always like to, and you said you'd listened to a couple of our previous podcasts. We'll jump into all things Manse Group business and what you do, but before we get there, let's hear a little bit about you. Who are you? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And what brought you to this podcast today?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, we were just speaking before about the Horsham links. It seems like everyone has a link back to Horsham, and I grew up there for the first 25 years of my life.
How old are you now?
So I'm 37 this year, so 36 at the moment. So basically completed year 12 there. Going to school, playing sport, part of the community. It was a great place to grow up, and then completed an apprenticeship there with Mick and Jeanette Munn, which was, going through that work process. And over the years, you really look back at the mentors at a party or your kind of professional life, and you really appreciate that. Yeah, that was a great part of my life.
Can I ask just with your schooling?
Yeah. Just
to pause a little bit on that. You did an apprenticeship, but during your schooling, living and going to school in the Wimmera, what did you think you wanted to do? Like you did what most people did in the Wimmera. Probably you did the same, Ben, where you played cricket and footy and basketball. But was there anything that grabbed your attention during your school years? Did you end up where you thought you'd be?
There was something about construction. So there was something there that I felt like I wanted to delve into. So originally I wanted to go in the army.
Okay.
I wanted to be in construction in the army. Thought I'll get a trade and go that way. Playing footy.
Did the Navy or the Army come and do a presentation at school?
They did, but I think I had links with grandfathers in the army, and there was something there. And mum and dad were supportive, but I think they were scared of what that might entail. Then playing a bit of football and dodgy knees kind of steered me in another direction. And you have different forks of the life, which might have been a good choice. So I appreciate my dicky knee.
Yeah.
And then, so I still had that construction vibe.
What did your parents do?
So mum worked at Spotlight,
okay.
So just in retail.
Yep.
And dad worked for Telstra, so telecom. So he worked there for 25 years. So hard workers, my sister and I. So there's the four of us in the family. Grew up in Horsham North, so working class kind of part of town, but wouldn't change it for anything. That's for sure. The construction link then was still there at school, and I wanted to complete year 12. It was important. The pressure at school, I felt, is unfair and was unfair about what uni course I was going to do. What university are you going to do?
Was uni ever an option?
It was on the cards. I'd chosen a course. I went for TAFE, and that was in construction management. I thought I had my car picked out of what I was going to drive. It was a Saab back then, Saab convertible, and I was going to be driving around and directing people how to build. I think
that's like picking your business cards and your podcast name before you've got something to talk about and a business to run.
I'm guessing you never got the Saab, and you
didn't get the Saab.
What was your? Did you have a? Because I have a similar. It was an SSU. That was mine.
That's actually pretty like just the Commodore.
I had the picture of the SSU. Like I had the brochure, the glossy brochure. I thought that's going to be my car. On a nursing wage, I'm going to buy myself an SSU.
Now I drive around in a tradie ute and I wouldn't know how to hold on to a hammer. So.
Yeah, no. Did you ever use your winch or not?
Nah, just for looks that.
So that didn't eventuate, and then I wanted to earn some cash over the week, over the summer, before I went off to TAFE, to Swinburne TAFE, to do construction management, and I started cold calling building companies.
Was Swinburne TAFE, is that in Horsham? Or is that
No, that was in other side of Melbourne.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Bundura.
How was that move?
I had a grandma that lived on that side of town.
Did you go and live with her?
Well, that was the plan. I was going to. But this cold calling around different companies in Horsham just to get this bit of cash, that involved getting a work with Mick and Jeanette Munn, and then that developed into an apprenticeship pretty quickly.
Okay.
So I was happy to go down that path, and I was ready for work. And but back on that school part of that pressure, it's something that I do a talk to St Joey's boys every year, so year 10s, and just saying, look, there is pressure there, but it doesn't matter what you choose. You can always change things. You can always go to uni. You don't have to go to uni. It's not for everyone, but it is for some people. And
that pressure comes on early. Like I remember even in year 7 and 8, they're starting to talk about it, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. Even when you get to uni, I still didn't really know.
You still don't know what you want to do.
Sometimes don't know. I just fell here and just stayed for 10 years. So.
Yeah.
But it's bizarre and it makes people question so much. You just sort of got to try stuff, don't you?
You do. And not be scared of I'm choosing one direction here. It doesn't mean you're in that forever. Yeah. Some people are lucky. I felt like I had construction in my blood, so I was heading that direction from the get-go, but some people aren't like that, and it's all fine.
And there's also so many different, like what you're doing now versus what you started out doing is, again,
correct.
Same industry, but pretty different, isn't it?
Yeah. So I won a scholarship to go overseas, and that was a big opportunity. I never wanted to go and travel. I had cousins that were traveling around the world. I'm like, well, I'll just stick in Australia, thanks. And then something changed, and I was given an opportunity. An application came in the mail, and something in me said, I'm going to get this. I'm going to win this. And we did. Met my now wife just before I left to go overseas. So it all happened pretty quick. And then 2 years over there and, traveling to 20 plus countries and experiencing all different culture.
So what was the scholarship?
So it was basically to give trades an opportunity overseas. And it's a 60-year-old foundation, so the Australian Overseas Foundation Scholarship, to really give the opportunities, because they realise all these other academics have opportunities to go overseas and do those types of things. But this basically just gives you a bit of a kick or an excuse to go. They'll pay for flights and a bit of setup costs, but it just gives you that.
So what did you actually do? So
I went over there and worked.
Okay.
Yeah, worked for 2 years and travelled and just got different exposures to different techniques and different buildings and architecture and things.
Now, did Rachel go with you? You met her just before you left.
Yeah. So I went over, found a house, set up, a different apartment. Wanted to stay away from Aussies.
Yep.
So I headed north. I just got off the train with a backpack.
Yep.
And headed north. Something was telling me that way.
So you stayed in London? Is that what?
Yeah, yep. Ended up in Angel, Islington, so just north of centre of London, which was a really good spot.
So nowhere near the walkabout?
No, I wanted to go opposite way just because of the I'm ochre enough as it is, so I wanted to steer clear. Lived with some crazy Italians for a bit, and then lo and behold, got an apartment with 2 Torquay people.
Yeah.
It was like, it was brilliant. Some of the best years of our lives. So yeah.
So 2 years over there, then you came back. What happened when you returned?
Came back, yeah. So had links with Lions Construction, so a commercial construction company in Geelong. And once again, we said mentors before, so I had a lot of mentors through that business and experiences and exposure to different construction there. And that's when I really got into more commercial stuff, and so got domestic and commercial background. And then, yeah.
What makes you jump out of the construction side and into the contract and the overseeing of it? Like at what point do you cross over? Yeah,
I was this week actually got notified that I've been approved for my commercial builder's license. So it's been a bit of a process to apply for that. And part of that process was submitting application. And it was a really good experience to look back and look at what I've done and how it's kind of eventuated. So it's a good question, and it really kicked off with probably the last big commercial job we did, trying to control defects and contractual issues early and be proactive. And something kicked in there, a bit of a spark. And I think I always had something that I wanted to maybe have our own business, or, because grass is always greener. It's easy to run a business and you can take off time whenever you want.
Get business cards.
Yeah, and a Saab.
Put your name up.
So I think that last project we did, it was a 96-bed aged care facility. So it was a lot of rooms, a lot of you make one mistake, you're probably going to make 96 straight up. So you're trying to really mitigate those processes. And then my family or my parents were retiring or getting closer to retirement and moving to Halls Gap. So they were starting that build process. And then, they couldn't find a designer. They were trying to find someone to design the house that suited the block, but, was in their price bracket. And then they went through the builder's quotes and trying to liaise all that. So I took charge of that and more project managed it from a distance. But then that spark lit of, oh, hang on, this could be maybe an angle here. And then through the build process too, of walking through and going, I wouldn't do it that way. Maybe we'll flag this, and trying to do that in a way that wouldn't inflame, parties and stakeholders is difficult. But yeah, that's how the business kind of started there. So
the business itself, you had that experience with your parents, which again I'm sure you, Ben, can relate to, and I know myself, having built a house before. There's so many things that you are like a deer in the headlights when it comes to building your first home or even a second or third home. There's things that you don't consider because it's not your wheelhouse. How did you take that thought around your parents' experience, and when did it actually formalise into a business?
Yeah, so back in 2017 it formally, so it was 6 years just gone in August. And so that's when we were registered as a business, and things started to really, we'll start to get the plan and processes, setting our, mission and our values, and really what, Rachel and myself we like to do is try and think bigger all the time. So not start something, we want to get things in place and processes and systems and think about the big picture first, and that slow burn and investment into what we do, I think is now starting to come off. And it's like, we're glad we put that time and energy and that slow burn at the start to where we are now. That's actually
not a very common thing for people starting their first business. Like people concentrating on the why. I know we joked about it before, that people when they start a business, they get their business cards and they think that's the start of the business. But that idea of actually having a picture of what you're trying to do, the vision, the mission, and working back from that, and making sure that the process is in place. Where did that come from? Was that your commercial background, or what did Rachel offer in terms of the contribution towards how you established the business to begin with? Yeah,
well, Rachel's amazing she's a marketing background, so she's got that in her, and then I've got a bad case of trying to be perfect. Yeah. So there's a fine line between being perfect but then being actually productive. But her marketing background definitely helps. So that even generated the brand that we've got. The branding guidelines. My cousin did the design, set out some clear design of colours even, and then that forms into what fonts we use and all that crazy, all that, and we still look back at that and go, well, no, that's not us. That needs to go back to our branding guidelines. What are we at? That investment back then, we're still going back to it and using it. So, yeah, I think her marketing background definitely helps there. Commercial background, definitely. From a contractual point of view of trying to get things right. Construction is hard. People make mistakes. I've made plenty, but it's trying to learn from that and how we put, stop gaps in along the way. And then that's what's built, 3 main cores of business with contract reviews, before people enter it in. Because usually the dispute will arise and then they look at the contracts. Too late then. Let's look at it first before it's entered.
What percentage of people are doing that? Like, what percentage of people are getting support around their contracts?
Very, very low. Well, I do about 50 a year, and I'd spend about 6-8 hours going through the contract, because everything's specific. There's a lot of general clauses in there, but each build is specific to that block, that client, and their drawings. So you've got to look at it. We look at it from a builder's perspective, not a legal perspective at all, because we're not legal practitioners. So we're very clear with our clients in that respect. But a lot of legal practitioners don't know the building side. So they know the law, absolutely, but what that SAW report reflects in that engineering drawings or...
So what are the types of things that you're looking...
I was going to say, there's an example Rachel gave us, and I'll probably butcher it, but you'd read one, and it was about I think it was water connection, and they had quoted to go like under the road and shut the road for a day, or something, traffic management. And when you looked at it and you cross-checked it and you said, they don't need to do that, like the water connection's on the same side.
I just tapped into dial before you dig and got some reports, and like, well, the main is on this side. So there's a 4, 5, 6 grand saving straight up.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah. It's something weird that I'll read something and it will, you know, raise it will kind of, I'm going to look into that a bit more, I think. And then you come back to facts. Simple as that. Yeah. So any large costs or anything that seems a bit unreasonable, it's like, oh, that's intriguing. Haven't heard of that before. Let's look into this. And then there it goes.
Yeah, whereas you and I picked that up, Jay, and we've got
no idea.
You just trust that process.
Yeah, I can think of 3 or 4 items just like that in my build that it was not until we're done and we're in the building. The biggest one, I had a little bit of digression. The height of our doors, I actually didn't, on the rear doors of our sliding doors of our house, I didn't know till we were actually in the house. They were actually in the house, done and dusted, that they were, you know, a foot lower than the ones at the front. And it was in the contract, but I just hadn't picked it up. I just hadn't had the conversation. It was one of those things that I just totally missed, and it was my fault. But if I had someone saying, "Hey, these doors are lower than the front ones," is that what you want? Because that kind of doesn't make sense. I would have said no. Thanks for picking it up.
Yeah, it is funny that the dumb questions I ask. I ask a lot of dumb questions. So like when I haven't asked the dumb question, it's come back and gone, "Oh wait, how did that not get picked up?" And you're like, "Oh, I thought." You never think. In construction, you just got to never assume. It's always back to drawings, back to contract and spec.
So contract review was one of the 3 core elements. What are the next 2?
So our main core is the stage-by-stage inspections throughout the build process. And that could be from a builder's perspective or a homeowner. So, 5 typical stages in a build. So pre-pour before the concrete gets poured, the frame, pre-plaster, waterproof fix, and then the final. So, we go in, we have a set checklist which was developed basically when I was back on the tools. You know, we used to have these internal checks. We used to write a list on a stud in the house. Make sure we put those connections in and, you know, put the noggins in here. And that was our internal checklist. Feels like that the more volume built home, I suppose you'd say, doesn't have those oversights.
I was going to ask that. Reviews. Is that what's driven probably the need more so, is the change in what the construction industry has undertaken in the last, decade, 20 years, like where the volume build and people are impatient. Like people now expect their home to be built in, 20 weeks or something. So that obviously creates, you know, there's efficiency, but there's also corners that get cut.
There is. Yeah. There's a fine line. I think we're all guilty of wanting things at a price, but at a price, things are affected. You know, we can go into a supermarket and buy the same can of beans, you know, and it might be double the cost. But if we spent 20 minutes reading that and researching the company, we'd find out that we probably should be buying the dearer beans. It's similar with that, with everything, you know. So the consumer has to probably be educated a little bit as well. But in saying that, there is minimum standards, and then that's what we look at. So we look at the minimum standards and the requirements. We look at the contractual obligations of all parties. And then, you know, specifications and things like that flags issues and defects, and trying to flag them early. So there's not a bigger knock-on effect down the track is really critical, and that's what our checklists do. Is
that why it's so important that you probably come in at that? You're there from the outset, like more so that if you come in halfway and you're only going to see half of the issues.
Correct. Yeah. So some people get us in for a final. We can be engaged at any stage. There's no issues there. But the earlier we're engaged, the more we'll probably identify and be proactive in that respect. So,
how many people do you think currently take the opportunity to get the pre-inspections versus not?
I would say it's probably a 50-50 now.
Okay.
It's quite significant, especially in the last 2 years. I think more Melbourne-based people are very wary of it, and it's very common. But down here, it's just a given, basically. Okay. So it's becoming more popular, I suppose. There's a lot of companies out there. It's not a registered or a requirement to have a registration. So that's what we're finding, trying to educate clients again. We're looking at the 2 cans of beans. You know, why is this one this price? Or is it this price? Well, if you delve into it, you know, what are the qualifications of the people doing inspections, and, you know, have they a set checklist, and do they go back and re-inspect? Because that's what we include. We love to go back and, all right, it's good to have a report that's, you know, 100 pages, that's great, but is it being actually fixed, or is it just said it's being fixed? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about just the cost of living pressures and whether or not it's one of the things that people kind of skip on at the moment, thinking, well, can't really afford to pay for that inspection or that pre-inspection. But the way I would think about it, and you're probably the same, Ben, and I'm definitely sure you would be, Jake, that this is one of people's biggest investments. Like if it's their principal residence or it's an investment property, it's a pretty significant asset that you want to make sure that you maintain the value of and that you want to ensure is right, as close to perfect as it possibly can be. So I'd suggest it's an expense very much worth undertaking.
It is. You know, the third core of our business now is the defect and the dispute kind of process. And it's one we've held off on entering because there's so much emotion by the time something's gone wrong and not been rectified properly. And, you know, it could be 2 years by then that someone's been trying to get something fixed. And that could be from a builder's perspective or a homeowner. The stress and energy that goes into these things, that people say, I wish I had have been proactive. I just wish I had have had someone, you know, through the build process.
Without well, obviously we're not naming names or anything like that, but in terms of what are the most common things that end up in dispute? Like what are the things that sort of are flagged as hard to resolve?
Waterproofing is a big one. So there's usually a leak or a big effects there. There's waterproofing balconies, being coastal to, you know, wind-driven rain. It's to find a leak can be difficult. So you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars trying to trace where is this coming from and whose issue is this, you know, who's caused this. So they're common. What I find is typically it's a minor problem that's then gone probably a little bit toxic and it's escalated and maybe not have been dealt and handled correctly. And then that's knocked on to further, you know, we can get called up to do a full inspection. We can be instructed to find all the defects. It's not fully enjoyable because you know what you're there for and we're paid to do that. And so we'll find all the big ticket items we possibly can. And that goes into a list because we've been instructed to do that. Where the first issue, it was just a minor issue. Now it's turned into hundreds of thousands of dollars. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I think the connection originally with Manse Group and us was I think you might have done some work for Peter.
Yeah, correct. Right. Yeah, he was just wanting some advice or some, you know, things that were going on with his house.
Yep.
Yeah, so, and just to assist and look at the facts. We always pair it back. And that's what we're very proud of doing, all the team does. All right, let's go back to drawings. Let's go back to spec. You know, what's tolerable, what's not. Some clients might be wanting more than actually what's required. So some builders find us, they thank us as well. You know, there's that definitive line, that black and white approach that we have. It's basically, we're in the middle there.
Yeah, I think having that level of independence, I suppose.
It's the key word I think of.
Yeah. It's important. I was thinking about this from a financial planning point of view. We talk about this kind of ad nauseum on our podcast about the relationships that we have and the people that we work in conjunction with, and that it very much is a collaborative effort. You know, we're trying to make sure that we work closely with those other professionals that we cross over with, because we will cross over with accountants and solicitors and mortgage brokers and all those types of things, but we cannot, and I think for the client's benefit, and I'm assuming it's the same for yourself, that you want there to be a seamless collaboration between those professionals, not too much tension. I mean, the tension's really the last resort, isn't it?
Correct, yeah. Things can be interpreted differently too from reports, but the whole team are very approachable. So it's pick up the phone, have a discussion. You know, what's written there might not come across well, but how it's delivered then, so meet up on site. Let's talk about it on site with all stakeholders and run through it. The kicker we get is, you know, there might be supervisors out there that might not really like, you know, getting these big long lists of issues and defects, but when we get the referral from, I'm such and such a sister.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, okay. You know, we're striking cool. They want us to look after their families or their close friends. And that's really our kicker and reward there. We know we're doing something right. Yeah.
I was thinking about the evolution over the last 6 years, from looking at your mum and dad's place to you and Rach setting a vision and a mission. What does Manse Group look like today? Like in terms of how does it look different to where your vision, the way you thought the business would be? Where are you today in terms of number of people, the amount of people? You mentioned sort of the number of contract reviews you do, but what sort of quantum of work are you doing today, 6 years after establishing the business?
Yeah, so personally still doing a lot of hours, which is always good. It is reducing, which is great, and my role's changing. But from a business perspective, there's 8 in the team with Rach and I. So we're pretty proud of growing that. Just last week we celebrated Dane's 4-year work anniversary. For a 6-year company, we've had some of the 4 years, which I think is great.
So what's the mix of the team? Are they in terms of admin or builders, or what are they? What do they do?
So there's 5 of us from the assessor's point of view and building consultants. So we're all registered building practitioners. And then there's the 3 in the office that kind of job share with Rach. So Kristen and Nadia. And they do more the admin, set up the jobs and get that process really, really clean. And then it's a really handover to the guys. And from day dot, we've always had our own clients, because I basically copied and pasted what I used to do. I used to run around with 70 clients, which I couldn't do now. I wouldn't even want our guys to do that, because it was, it's 8 days a week. It really is. But the team run around 30 to 40 clients each. And that's a really nice connection that's followed through. So, someone might go past their house and be fretting on, I've seen this cracked bit of timber. Or you ring the assessor, ring the consultant. They'll either get back to you straight away, or send them an email, and they'll allay that kind of. It's like it's all good. I've made a note in the job file. They'll look at that back at the next inspection. I think relax. It doesn't sound like anything too significant, and even that is just like, oh my gosh, I would pay anything for this.
So that stuff seems priceless. I know when we, from our client perspective, they'll call you about something, and they're a bit stressed. Yeah. And it's not even an issue, but they don't know it's not an issue. So you just can have that conversation, give them that peace of mind, and everyone just carries on. Yeah. And that's what they pay for more than sometimes the complex stuff, isn't it? With the contracts or documents. Like they just want to be able to hear their concern and have it, allayed, and they're good. So it's we do a lot of that similar stuff. I was thinking as you're saying that.
Reassurance. Yeah. Big support. Just you're there. Communication's key. And having good systems behind you to do that as well. Once again, we invested from the get-go on, a program that it can be infinite now, but at the start we were like, this is $8,000 a year for me. It just didn't compute. Sense, but we're like, now it is, it is paying back in dividends there. But 220 clients on the books at the moment.
So those 220 clients, are they from anywhere in that stage, from contract review to pre-inspection to dispute?
Yeah, correct. So that could be builders as well. So we work for Enso Homes, called Geelong Builder, and Levonix Homes. So any stages there of those 5 stages, or dispute or complex ones of, I've got this going on, can you come have a look? There's always something in construction. That's the good thing about it. There's so many angles and avenues of issues, sadly, or, complexities, that there's always something to look at or see.
So for someone listening to this podcast and thinking whether or not maybe they've got, maybe they're getting ready to build, maybe they're halfway through a build, maybe they've got some concerns about a build that's already been completed, is there a point, I'm guessing that earlier rather than later is best, but is there any stage you don't want people to come and talk to you about it, or talk to about their concerns or queries?
Not really. I mean, you've got the best time is during the build, because you've got the builder there. As soon as the handover does happen, it is harder to get people back. So that's probably a little bit of advice there. They've got the warranties. So the prescribed period that action can be taken against a builder is the 10-year period. So that's one thing for people to keep in mind. There's a bit of confusion there. Some people think 6.5, 7 years, but that's the insurance side of things. It's more that 10-year period from handover or occupancy permit.
So if someone was wanting to get in touch with Manse Group, where can you be found? How do they get in contact with you? Have you got a website? Have you got a client portal?
Absolutely,
how do they get a hold of you?
mansegroup.com.au is probably the best point of view. Or our phone number that someone's usually on the phone, so 0352 00 9210, and you'll speak to one of the awesome team in the office there. And even they're really good. It's amazing, the reviews online. The guys, we do put in quite a fair bit of effort and probably the more hours, but in the reviews, they go, Rachel, Kristen, we're lovely during the build process.
That happens here too, doesn't it? I remember Teresa's name, but
I've poured in 100 hours, and the girls do a great job, absolutely. But my bottom put in 4 hours, and they're getting the glory.
So just with that, I mean, Google reviews, like things like reviews, super important in this day and age. I know that more and more people will want some sort of endorsement. They want some sort of social proof, if you like, that people are legit. People can jump online, check out your Google reviews.
Yeah, Google, Facebook, something we pride ourselves on. I mean, you look through it, it's all 5 stars, or, you know, there's a few bogus ones in there, which are always interesting to respond to. But the actual reviews that are in there, some of them go for pages. You know, some of them really pour their heart out of, you know, explaining about what we did and how the process was. And when you read them, and we, you know, have our team meetings, we'll read out a couple of them, and that's what keeps us going. Yeah, that's what Dane was talking about last week. Of, you know, job satisfaction is huge. I think that's a big thing of why we still have our own clients. We have our specific clients because you can see the job through. And you can get, you know, outcomes for your client, whether that is a builder or a homeowner, and that really says it all.
They're not just a number; they're a person with a story. And I think building a home is a bit like when we do. You know, we're doing the financial stuff. It's one of the biggest things people will ever do in their life. Like, not many people build 10 homes. Like, they might build 1, 2, and they usually don't know too much about it, do they? So they need someone to guide them through it and just see it out from start to finish. One of the questions I had, and again, this might be difficult, but say someone is looking to build or do a big renovation, like, where do they start? Like, they don't even know where to start with a builder. Like, what would you suggest someone does to start? They go, I don't know, do I jump on Google? What would you suggest someone does from the start through to just get the ball rolling?
Yeah, I think a good design is great. It's a bit of a couple of prongs. Yeah. You need to have a few builders in mind, and maybe a couple of designers of what you like from an aesthetics point of view. But then to have builders' input is also important, or a consultant's input of, you know, some designs can be tweaked slightly and make the build a whole lot more easier and actually make it buildable. So builders might come in and give some great kind of guidance, and then so there's a collaboration there. So the design is very important, and maybe with a bit of buildability kind of guidance is key, and that can, you know, good design flows on, and you do have to pay for it. So it is an investment, and some people, once again, can of beans. Yeah, you look at two prices and go, I'll go the cheap design, but then the flow on
you pay for from it later.
If the builders, you know, come up to issues, or, you know, there might be variations that are generated from that. So
I think this is where potentially there's that overlap between, like, people making a decision, because, I mean, building a home is a fairly significant financial decision. If a client came to us, we'd be trying to line up the financial ducks, if you like.
I was thinking that. I'm like, people say, oh, we're thinking about building, and they go, like, how much do we, or buying as well, like, how much can we afford to spend? And then they've got to really work out what they want, and then work out what they, you know, what's a negotiable, what's a non-negotiable, and back through that process. But when they're doing a build, it's really tricky to know. You know, you go and look at a house down the road and it's got a value on a price on it. Like, they're sort of locked into that. Whereas there's a lot of unknowns when they go through that with the design and the build and things. And as much as there's a contracted value, like, it's, as we've talked about, there's always, you know, room for blowouts and unexpecteds. So it's always interesting with you, where do people start that process? Sometimes they do it completely backwards, like they have gone and bought a block of land, but they haven't even thought about what they want to build, or, you know, can they afford to do it? I'm just trying to get my mind around what's the best order of that from the construction side of things. Yeah. Probably depends, which is probably the case for
and that's the thing about construction. Everyone does have an opinion, or there's all different scenarios, and you try and pare it back all the time. But, yeah, even buying a block, what's the orientation? Yeah. You know, that's a big one. You want a pool? Okay. Well, this shaded side here, or this hot side here, or how's it going to work?
Yeah. So sloping blocks on it around here. There's a lot of that.
I think that willingness to do due diligence and go in, like, again, everyone's different personalities. I'm probably more on the conservative side of saying, hey, I need to line my ducks up. My wife would call me a procrastinator. I'd say I'm very considered, so I will want the data, I'll want the information, and then I'll make a decision. She's very reactive and would say, just buy the block. And she, again, that's worked well in the past, but I think the combination between sort of reactivity and also having, this is where we would probably say, encourage people, if you've got a significant decision in your life, a financial decision, go and speak to someone. Be prepared to actually, you mentioned about getting different opinions, and knowing that there might be some cost involved with actually getting those opinions and getting that oversight. But the end result the end result will actually hold you in much better stead. Like I had a client meeting yesterday where I was sort of talking about value and the value that is added in terms of getting financial advice. And some of it is probably very similar in your world, that some of it's quite quantifiable. You can actually say, if we don't dig up the road, it's going to save $4,000.
Yep.
Right? But there's the element which is peace of mind and around relationships. And that is up for the client to decide, the individual to decide about the value that they place upon having a group of professionals around them that can actually guide and direct them in the right manner. Again, I'm very biased, and again,
we are biased as a business because that's what we like to do. And, we've had, I like working with buyers advocates and stuff like that because they can come in and just, again, it's that third party intervention and just look at it and just look at the facts, take the emotion out and tell you how it is. Which is sort of, again, for the existing property that they're buying, that's where they fit in. For you guys, it's more that build side of things. And I think that's where people need help because it's complicated.
Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't have said it better. That is spot on.
Any other questions, Ben?
No, I think that was my good question.
I like that question. Yeah, and it is interesting. Again, we talk about this a lot, but that overlap between, we're having many, many diverse businesses and people on the podcast, but the common theme for everyone in business doing well is the importance of relationships and the importance of collaboration. And so, for anyone out there listening and thinking, as Ben said, they're contemplating a build or they're contemplating a significant financial decision, whatever it might be, take the time to get some support. Take the time to get some good people around you and be encouraged and trust word of mouth. That's why things like Google reviews go on. Check people out. Yeah. Listen to this podcast. Share it widely. If you know someone out there that you think could benefit, I think it's super important. Is there anything else you'd like to close with? I know we'll probably need to get Rach back on because it sounds like Rach does all the work behind the scenes and you've got the glory of coming on the podcast.
Right. Yeah,
she threw you in here very quickly.
She did, mate. No, it's been great. Like we said, it is a relaxed chat. And we're always open to chat for people. They need to contact us, give the office a call and talk to us about any issues or problems, or ideally it's proactive because that is the best way. And that's it.
Great. Well, Jake, thanks for coming on the podcast. I look forward to, I'm sure we'll do a round 2, maybe a round 3 with Rachel here as well, and more than welcome to have any of the other team on board. Yeah, I'm sure this one will be well received. Anything property wise, we know it's
hot topic.
Hot topic. Yeah,
Always.
Anything lending, property, construction, investments in property, it's always well received. So again, Jake, thanks very much. It was great to chat.
Anytime. Cheers, guys.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britain FP, or Google Burke Britain Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britain Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.